Okay, we'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting March 26th, 2024 of the Keystone Central School District School Board of Directors to order. And we would like to start into our
I would recommend you do it.
all right, I guess next is any hearing of visitors. Okay. Moving on to items to discuss. Since first item is our budget update, which we've done here the last couple months, and so I'll hand that over to Joni, and she can walk us through where we are at the present time with the budget development.
Okay. This is where we are in the current state of the budget. I have updated the support and the secretary wages for the next 4 years per their contracts. The secretary contract was already approved by the board. The support one is up for April approval, but I have went ahead and updated those numbers. So you'll see a little bit of a difference between the expenditures. They actually went up a little bit because of the negotiations. So the second slide is what you've all seen before, is the timeline. Nothing changed there. This is a slide that shows the no tax increase. Again, you'll see that I did update the expenditures. So the shortfall went from 2.2 to 2.381. The next line is the number that you should have recognized from the facilities meeting, and that is the match. That 2197622 is the 25% match that we will, what I would recommend to use budget reserves for versus adding it in as an extra expenditure. Because it truly is, there's no revenue to match the other side of that. It's a true expense, but I would recommend using the general fund balance for those, for that 25% match. Having said that, then that takes your reserves, your general fund balance down to from 18 million to 14 million. Now, again, this is worst case at the end of the year. Well, let me back up. 23-24, we did not close the gap and we ended up with a $1.5 million deficit. Taking that into 24-25, that 14 million is also taking into account that we did not close the 2.3 deficit and we did use the budget reserves for the match. So that is worst case in all scenarios, that would be 14 million. But again, I don't have anything else to base it on as of today that would show any difference of that being the numbers. The next slide is again what you've seen before with the 25% increase or 1.78 millage increase. That's a difference of about $500,000. So you see the numbers will have decreased by about 500,000. The next slide will show you maybe. There we go. The next slide will show a 50% increase or a 3.55 millage increase. You'll see a difference there of about 900,000, closer to 950. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it'll show you on the last slide, but it's about somewhere between $9 and $1 million difference there in the numbers. You see that projected 24-25 general fund balance went from 14 to 15 million. The next slide then will be your 75% increase or 5.34 millage increase. Again, it's going to decrease by another 563,000. As we mentioned last board meeting, April is the time when I'm going to need some kind of direction from the board as to how we're going to either, or was there any kind of tax increase direction as to decrease the shortfall. So if you'll see on the next slide is a recommendation to decrease the budget shortfall with a partial tax increase of 3.55%. It does have an impact where you will, having any type of tax increase, although we don't, as a as a community love them, it does help maintain a level of tax increases where you don't yo-yo from years to years. If you don't have any for 4 years, then all of a sudden you have one, that creates quite the yo-yo effect for the community. Where if you see, small, medium-sized tax increases from year to year, then again, that kind of evens things out. The expenditures are including the rising cost of healthcare, unfortunately. It also includes the matching grant funds, expenditure, including for capital improvements. We have depleted, for the most part, the capital fund 32 funds. We used a portion of those for the soft costs, some of the soft costs for Liberty Curtain, and just general capital improvements throughout the district. So we have pretty much depleted those funds. If you do remember, though, we did move over 600,000 from the surplus from last year. That will probably get us through this year, and that's doing minimal projects. So having going into next year for 24-25, I don't have anything in the budget for reserves. There just isn't any money in the reserves. So again, that's something we're going to have to discuss. If you would take this 50% or 3.55% increase, it would yield about $930,000. It would have a tax increase of approximately $55 per year. And we are still, as of last year, we were as well the fourth lowest in the IU for millage rates for Center, Clinton, and Clearfield counties. The next slide is another recommendation, and it just shows the 25% increase or the 1.78 millage increase. Same type of impact with the level tax increases to healthcare, the capital improvements. I may also want to, you can maintain fund balance for revenue generation for your interest if you, again, keep that general fund balance higher. It will generate approximately 465,000, and you'll see a home value tax increase of about $35. The next slide is the graph that shows all of the area school districts in our IU and us being fourth from the bottom. See, the average was 17.73. So we are, again, the fourth lowest millage rate. Any questions? This is more than likely, the numbers won't change much till the next board meeting, till the April board meeting. We do have the early retirement incentive plan out there to the teachers. We have heard a couple of people talking about it. One has committed to retire, and but they don't have to have that information back to us till mid-April, which is after the board meeting. So we are not going to know what that impact will be. Also, per the personnel committee, they were also going to offer that to the Act 93, but that is there's conditions on that as well. They have to have so many committed before we would actually offer that. Otherwise, there would be a negative impact. So we are taking steps to try to, decrease this deficit. But we will not know those until we will know them before the May meeting. But I need some kind of direction at the next board meeting as to what direction we want to go in.
Is there many in the Act 93? I looked at them.
There's probably 5.
What do we need to?
You need 3. You need 3 to make it work. There's some back-end advantages if some of them would take the offer. You may want to rethink some of those positions and maybe not make them Act 93 positions. Maybe they could be support positions instead. So there are some back-end advantage of it. So we want to look at the short-term effect of that, which is the cash. But what are the long-term effects if we would change some of those positions around? And we've thought through those. But we currently already have one that's retiring, and they're doing it without the plan. But if we offer this, then we do have to pay them. So that's the negative impact. So you need 2 or really 3 additional people to make it financially impactful. And I'm not saying we won't get that, because there was a couple who are very interested, and they have to meet the same requirements as the ACE agreement. So let me take this a step further. And I'm going to jump down to, is it item 3? Or maybe it's not even on there. It might not. Okay, actually, it might not even be an agenda item. Well, it will. This ties into the 2 and 3, which is the resolutions. 3 and 4, I apologize. 3 and 4, which is the resolutions. So I wanted to show the impact of the general fund balance. So 23, 24, at the end of this year, if, and this is even if we don't close the gap of 1.5 million sitting there this year, we will still have a general fund balance of 18 million. If you look at 24, 25, remember we said that the gap was 2.3. This is worst case scenario for 24, 25. We don't close the gap. You see the grant match of the 2197. If you commit it, that's a resolution. If you commit it, that grant match will be taken out of the unassigned and put in its own committed line. Up top, I've taken about 500,000 out of the capital projects because I'm going to assume we're going to use some of those for Liberty Curtain. It might be more than that, but I estimated 500,000, and I took an additional 500,000 out of the technology because I know we're going to use some technology committed funds. What I also did, now you'll see the personnel expenses that was committed of the 1.1 million. I'm going to recommend uncommitting those and putting them back into the unassigned. They were assigned back in 2022 is when you committed to assign them for the reasons of unknown impact of pandemic on employment, future negotiations, and enrollment. We didn't use those in 22, and we're not going to use them in 23. I don't think we're not going to need them in 24. We're not going to need the additional committed 1.1 funds. I do not believe. So my recommendation is uncommit those and put them back in your unassigned balance. That will help. And that's what I did here. You still see though, you're at 3.3 or 3.7, which is 4.2%. So we're getting down to half of the unhealthy range. This is again, worst case scenario. Then again, that just shows you then for 25, 26, what would that look like if it kept going? I just want to give you an idea. If we went with no additional revenue generation through taxes, this is the worst case scenario that could happen. Of course, that impacts your general fund balance, that impacts your revenue generation for interest on that amount. What I would also say is that CD that we have, $7 million CD that we just rolled again for 5.25, that will end in end of May. That will end at the end of May. I know interest rates are supposed to drop. So I would probably recommend at that time that we maybe commit $5 million of that. We'll have to see where we are, but maybe commit $5 million of that because I know interest rates are more than likely going to drop, and put the other 2 into just the money market. And that can kind of sit there as our grant match. Our money market is at 4%. So we're not losing that much. Plus, I don't think we're going to get 5.25 again either, even on short term or long term. So I don't think we're missing the boat there on investing. So I'm not as concerned about the long-term effects of the interest next year. But then if you keep using general fund balance, you don't have that to invest. So again, I don't think this is going to look any different in the next 2 weeks for the board meeting. And so then I'll just need, again, just that then some kind of direction. Question, comments?
Well.
So any comments or questions on, so that just rolls into the 2 resolutions. 147 is to commit the grant match, if the board would approve to do that, and uncommit the personnel 1.1. I think that makes the most sense than having that committed and not part of the unassigned, because that does help the unassigned percentage. And I don't think we need that. You would have to use it for exactly that. I don't see us needing additional personnel expenses.
And if we don't get the grant,
And if we
$2
don't get the
million.
grant, exactly. But you have, unfortunately, you have to show that as committed.
Committed.
Yes,
Yeah, so we don't get the grant, then that money would just roll back into,
we'll go
the
back into
unassigned,
right, unassigned.
yes.
But I feel like we need to keep in mind that there are some jobs that we have to do in order to keep our buildings functioning. And the HVAC in this building is one of those things that we're gonna have to do at some point. And so we have to go for these grants because we don't have the financial ability to pay for it outright. But I feel like we're kind of painted into a corner in some regards. We have to do the work. We can't afford to do the work, so we have to do grants, and for the grants, we have to have this 25 set aside.
well, I don't, you're right. It doesn't sound like we had a whole lot of choice. I mean, we've got to. We gotta do it. I mean, we've got- There's the-
Can't hear you.
Oh, I don't think she can, I don't know if she can.
you
unmute.
can't unmute?
Can you make her a co-host?
Board?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Dr. Redmond. I couldn't hear a word you were saying earlier.
My apologies. I was saying that to some extent, we're kind of painted into a corner in that we have to do the work on the HVAC system. It's failing and it needs to be replaced. It's at the end of life. It's just one of those things that has to happen. We know the cost is between $8 and $9 million. We can't afford that. In order to be able to do the work, we have to go out for a grant. In order to qualify for the grant, we have to set aside 25% of that $8 or $9 million cost to do the project. So because we have to get the work done in order to keep our buildings functional, everything else follows that we kind of have to do this resolution to set aside that $2.2 million.
Yeah, because if we don't have the match,
Did you
then
make her a co-host?
I didn't.
We just heard her a minute ago.
She was-
Can you hear us?
Oh, there. It just unmuted again. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I have a question.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Uh, just if everyone's sitting down, okay. And I'm not saying administration has not done this repeatedly for years, but is there any possible chance we can increase some classroom student to teacher ratios in any of the schools, whether it's Woodward, Liberty Curtin? Has that been completely and 100% done deal? We can't increase student ratios in any of those schools.
We are looking at that right now. We just had a meeting on that earlier today. And we're looking at the number of students in each class in the elementary schools. And we know, we're pretty sure we're gonna make some changes there for that reason. We're running against the physical size of our classes, as well as the needs of the students are all part of the calculation there. So we are absolutely looking at the number of students in each class. And we plan on making some changes to make sure that we're being as responsible as possible with that class load.
Okay, do you think if we have to do any redistricting, how long, just hypothetically, how long would that take? For you, for administration and everybody?
At least 2 years. I mean, if
Oh,
we were to start right now, we wouldn't have that redistricting plan until the start of 25.
okay, okay.
And
All
I
right,
think-
we'll look forward to finding your findings.
And this goes right back to the early retirement incentive, because
Sure.
if we, and I think there are several elementary people that would be eligible for that. And if that's the case, and several of them would take that incentive, then you would be able to certainly reconfigure your class sizes, and you wouldn't have to necessarily replace people through attrition.
Right.
And that way you would be saving positions, and thus you would be saving quite a bit of expense in the budget. And that was the whole intent behind the early retirement incentive in the first place.
Sure.
So
Right.
we could do exactly what you're saying without having to furlough anybody or anything along those lines, which no one wants to do.
Right.
And so I think that's why this, Joni's kind of in a tough position because she's going to bring this pretty much the same picture back to us in 2 weeks or whenever, or next week, I guess it is. Because we won't know what the incentive is, how many people are going to actually take advantage of that. And until we do, it's going to be pretty tough for her to make some calculations and for us to even talk about really recalculating and maybe collapsing some class size or some classrooms rather. I think we'll have a better picture of that here in another couple weeks, but until then,
I'm just a little confused on the redistricting comment. I didn't know, what are you talking about
she's talking about
redistricting?
moving kids around from
know,
building
but
to building.
I'd like to hear her take it.
She's muted again.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know. When my dog starts barking, I'm sorry, I have to mute it and it's causing a disruption. I'm sorry, but you don't want to hear her barking at people walking by. So, I didn't know if we, that's the question. If redistricting, increasing students in one school, larger classroom sizes, I mean, we wouldn't have to have, let's say, 12 sets of fourth grade classes. You know what I'm saying? And I know we don't have four.
So you're talking about moving kids from like one school to another school?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Has this been fully explored? If
I'm
would we
kind of
save
curious.
money? I don't know. If we increase some class sizes, I don't know. I'm just
Just
asking
curious what you were
parents.
thinking.
Yeah.
So that's what I was just asking,
Yeah.
what you envision, moving kids from one school to another school to reduce size is what I think of when we redistrict, but.
Or redrawn boundary lines
we
or
draw a
whatever.
boundary line.
Right. If it means that, we have too many fourth graders here, we could definitely increase the fourth graders in that school, however that matrix works out. Bottom line, we wouldn't have redundancy. Well, anyways, you follow what I'm saying. Okay. All right, here's another one. I know I've said this before, but I'm just going to say it again. Looking at the interior of Liberty Curtain and taking away potentially, do we really need new furniture, new this, new that? Do we have to have different types of flooring? Can we just do finished concrete? How much would that actually save us? We were never, ever given that number.
Why would we
that's-
want to do that? I mean, why would we want to put old furniture in a brand new building?
Because we can't afford new furniture. That's why.
That stuff has been budgeted.
I know, but if
those-
I'm just saying, okay, you're looking at ways at looking at reducing costs. And I'd also like to know if we don't increase the budget, okay, if we don't have a tax increase, what are we cutting? And I know that sounds like, oh, we can't cut anymore, but I don't know. That's the thing. What is
Elizabeth, do you
available to
realize-
be cut?
Do you realize where the bulk of your budget is? About
Yes.
65 million of that budget, of your 80 some $1 million budget, is in staffing. And the only way you're going to really save any kind of significant dollars in your budget is through saving on staffing. And that is the reason for the incentive and some other things. I mean, you can nickel and dime things. You can take a couple $1,000s out of building budgets and you can take it out of a lot of other places. But the bulk of, if you want to start making some big time savings, you got to do it in your staffing. And
Okay,
that's why, and you can put in crappy furniture all you want in Liberty Curtain and you can cut corners everywhere you want in that building, which I would never, ever recommend doing just to save a few $1,000s. But that's not where you're going to save your money in your budget. I'm sorry, but that's just the
One
way
other
it is.
thing you keep saying about changing the flooring, anytime you do something like that, it's a change order.
Right.
So it's gonna cost us more. We bid on a contract for Liberty Curtain. All right? I think you voted for it, so it's a done deal. So changing the flooring now would be a change order that would cost us money. So if that's what you're advocating, then
You ready to pay change
so you're
orders?
gonna pay for change orders. When we voted on Liberty Curtain Building, we have a contract for it, we have an agreement, what's to be done and what's gonna be done in the building. And now if you wanna change it, it's gonna cost money.
I'm just throwing things out there just to see what any discussion or feedback might be on it.
That's
I
something.
just know we can't, I'm sorry, we can't have another tax increase. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but my God, I just, we can't. How can we? How can we? It's not, if you don't have an option, if you don't have the option of having a tax increase, what's game plan? What's the game plan B? And I know it's gonna sound horrible, but I think the board should have that option. What does the school district look like with no tax increase? And yes, I know there are infrastructure things that have to take place. We're talking about the safety, security, heating, happiness of the students, things like that. Okay. But maybe there are things out there that have just been there for a while. And I mean, and then when we have that A and B, we let the taxpayers say, look, write to us, contact us, or we'll send you out a letter to get your response. I think we have to do that.
What are we asking the taxpayers? What are they, what are
If
response?
we're cutting, I'll just throw something out there. We're cutting X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's a program they love. We're
Yeah.
cutting this to make budget. And if they don't like it and they say, no, we want that. Absolutely. We want to keep that. We will pay more taxes to keep those items. I just feel that if we didn't have a tax increase last year, it would make probably sense, moving forward because of, the other new expenses. But I having option A, B, we're cutting this, we're cutting that, we're cutting this program, or we're raising taxes.
No matter what you ask the public, whatever program you're gonna throw out, say, well, let's say, why don't we, let's do a real popular one. Let's say we're gonna cut some sports. Do you realize we'd have to have the auditorium and maybe the stadium to fill the people that would be there opposed to that?
Well,
And
then that would be great.
But-
That would be great
What's
because that
wrong with
means
that?
they want the tax increase.
What's wrong with hearing from the people that are paying the bills?
I don't, nothing's wrong
Okay.
with hear from, but I mean, my point is, no matter what we say, what program you're gonna cut, there's always gonna be somebody that's opposed to it.
Sure, but what's that percentage?
I have no idea, but I,
That's what I'm saying. If
you,
I don't have a magic answer. I just know that going forward and just offering a tax increase without giving the public an alternative, no matter how bad that alternative has to be, I just feel it's part of my responsibility. It'll be ugly. It'll be ugly. But I just feel it's necessary, especially when they're saying, okay, we're gonna have another tax increase the following year, the following year, the following year. You know,
how many, we had, I believe, 3, possibly 4 years in a row with 0 tax increase.
mhm. That was with
And-
federal funding. If we didn't
and
have that federal program,
The only
boom.
problem with that, and everybody in the public doesn't want an increase. I don't want a tax increase. Nobody wants a tax increase, period. The problem with that, when you're trying to operate a district, and I'm sure Dr. Redmond would agree with this, and I'm not speaking for him, but I would say that most superintendents would say it makes more sense to make incremental, small increases as you go along, rather than saying, we're going to go 3 or 4 years with 0 tax increase, and all of a sudden, you have to hit people with a substantial increase. And that is worse, in my mind, than having incremental, small increases as you go along the road.
The
And
problem is too, is inflation and expenses aren't keeping up with our revenue.
I
I mean,
understand that.
that's absolutely the problem. And even if you took out the deficit, take out the $2.3 million deficit, we still have to commit the matching grant funds, which everyone's in favor for. Well, that has to come from somewhere. I mean, so if it's hard to say, yes, I'll vote for the grant matches, but I'm not going to vote for additional revenue to help that money, help get that money. We already have to put out $9 million for it. So, to get the grant money. So I think it's a good deal if we only have to put towards 2. Well, that's additional expenses. Again, our expenses are outweighing the increases is higher than what our revenue generation is. We only get so much money from the federal government and the state government, and they're only committing so many dollars. They're not keeping up with our expenses like the federal grant matches. So it's hard to balance those unless you start using general fund money or come up with alternative revenue generating. And I agree with you about the expenses, and that's what we're trying to do. We understand that we absolutely are looking at class reduction sizes. Absolutely. We're using attrition so that, for those positions that, especially in the elementary level, to collapse class sizes. And, we are absolutely heading in that direction. But even if those weren't happening, again, we can't keep up with the cost of the expenses and the cost of inflation, just flat out. The revenue can't keep up. And that's kind of the state we're in. So we would have to constantly be cutting programs and cutting staff. And is that the best option for our kids?
Is that, if, I don't know. That's right, Joni.
And it's a balance. And I agree with you. It's an absolute balance. But, and I would agree that what Jeff is saying about the small incremental tax increases, I get it too. And maybe there's a year you don't have to have a tax increase. But the problem is going 3 or 4 years, then you're going to have a 75% tax increase to make up for all that inflation that we didn't keep up with. And that's just the economics of it.
Right. Well, this isn't helpful this particular second, but when you were saying you're going to be shopping for potential, benefit packages for
Absolutely.
the health.
And we will have savings on that. Absolutely.
How, do you have any idea? I mean, I know there's no set timetable, but do you have like a ballpark idea when bids might be coming in, or however you're contracting this RFP?
I didn't put it on this agenda because yesterday we will have four different proposals. We don't have numbers because the first part is just having 4 people who want to propose.
Yes.
Actually put in a quote. The next piece is I will get in touch with all of them. They will get in touch with whoever they want to, CM Regent, Liberty Mutual, whoever they want to get a quote from, each individual, but there's 4. It's going to be competitive and we will save money. So absolutely, those are the type of things we are trying to do. Health insurance will be next, and that's going to be a huge undertaking, but it will be worth it. Again, we're trying to use all of those creative paths to figure out how we can save money.
Elizabeth, I want to just to Jeff's earlier point. This is still kind of dancing on the margins. The cost of doing business and the inflation, the increased costs because of the raises that teachers get, not teachers, all staff gets that are built into their contracts.
Right.
That the cost increase over time is faster than our revenue increase, just that part alone.
Right.
So we've established a system where we're providing a level of service to our kids in our community that we're going to make as many changes as we can without sacrificing that level of service, because that's what our community expects.
Right.
If we don't find ways to generate more revenue, we will have to compromise on the level of service that we're providing to our kids in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's doing a disservice to the kids that we're trying to educate here. I mean, if we're raising class sizes to 30 and
Well, we won't. Well, I don't think any of us will ever say 30, Jeff. Don't go to no threes.
Well,
No
you may-
threes.
you may have to go there if you're doing what if if we can't afford to do anything else, I mean, if we have to do that, we may have to go to larger class sizes. I don't want to do that. That's the last thing I want to do because, especially for, for those primary kids, those ones, I mean, you might be able to get away with that in your upper grades, but I mean, you're talking, kinder, first, second grade kids. I don't think any of us want to see large class sizes there. And, if we're talking about collapsing classes and that, I mean, you have to take that all into consideration before you do something like that, because it would compromise the quality of the instruction that we're giving to those kids. And to me, that's not acceptable.
Okay, well, here's something else, and I realize this is gonna be discussed in executive session, personnel, whomever, at a later date, but the topic, I can say the topic. The contract for the Sugar Valley Charter School is coming up. And also, there's still Pennsylvania, House of Representatives, Congress, about the fair funding thing. Of course, we have no control over that. We don't know what's gonna happen, and we can't bank on it. I understand that. But I just feel that at the bare minimum, we've got to cut something and let the public have enough time to reach out to us easily and voice their collective opinion. Not 10 people, not 6 people. I mean, a nice chunk of people to give them, give them enough time. And what administration decides what would be the most reasonable thing to cut? I don't know what that is, but the boots on the ground know. So it may only be, $200,000 or $400,000 or $800,000, whatever that number may be. But we have to show, don't we have to show something? And then otherwise we'll say, look, if the tax increase at this percent or the tax increase in this percent. And if the majority of the public comes back and said, we want that lower tax increase, cut those programs or cut whatever it is. Okay, I feel confident, but I don't feel as an individual, I don't feel confident that just to give a tax increase without getting real public input, something that can actually relate to and is objective, not just I don't want a tax increase. I appreciate you listening.
Tony, what numbers are you using for the state revenue?
23 million,
How does that
23
compared to last year?
23 million. So currently 19, it was 19, 18 something, 22, 23, 23, 24. I'm using the 23 base, 24, 25. I'm also using the 23 base. And they did come back and say, they didn't say guaranteed. They did not say guaranteed, but they said very, very, very highly likely we will get an additional 500,000 for student weighted ADMs. And that's very more than likely we will get that. I added 500,000 in. There's also an additional 1.5 we might get. I did not add 1.5 additional. I did not. I'm not
So
comfortable.
basically you build it on the 23 number.
I did.
That included additional funding we just got?
Yes, that's it. Yes, that's our new
Moved
basic ed amount. Yes. So I did not, I mean, they sent us nice spreadsheets. You could possibly get, it's called advocacy amount. Again, somewhere between 500 and 1.5. I'm just not comfortable. They keep saying you'll get something. Is something 500,000? Is something 750,000? I just don't want to bank revenue.
So it's guaranteed.
Yeah,
we'd have to be conservative.
It won't be guaranteed until.
no, because that just puts us in a further deficit.
We won't know until after we have to pass our budget.
Right.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Urban, I can't hear you again.
All right, sorry about that. I said, we won't know what our revenue will look like until after we have to pass our budget.
Oh, yeah, till after they pass theirs, which you hope it's June, but they've been known not to pass budgets on time.
What do our local legislators say about this? Do we have any insider there that can give us some more personal background information on this? Or I'm just curious what our local representatives are saying about this. Any word from them or not? Nothing.
The brief conversations I've had, and this is only with Representative Takak, is that it's a political process that will take time, and he doesn't have any insights as to how it's going to turn out.
Yep, well, thank you. Okay, sure.
I just think we're at a real premature point with this budget. Because like Joni just said, we don't know what's gonna happen with the cost of healthcare. Obviously, if we're shopping it around, we're gonna get the best deal we can, and we're probably gonna save some money there. We don't know what's gonna happen with the retirement incentive. There are a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of question marks there. So before we start saying, well, we're gonna cut this, we're gonna cut that, I think, I'm sure that the administrative team is not leaving any stone unturned in trying to find where they're going to find some savings here before we have to make a final decision on a tax increase or not. I'm confident, that they're going to be able to find some savings, and especially if we, are lucky with some of these things, I just think that we're still early in the game before we have to commit to any potential tax increases.
Good point, Jeff. I appreciate that. I just want to let him know, though, that I am open to getting a list of if we cut X, Y, and Z, we'll save this amount of money and we won't have to have a tax increase or as much of a tax increase. And with the understanding the public has more than, quote, 30 days to comment. That's all.
Yeah, in terms of the timing, I think we're running into a challenge there because we need to hear from the board sooner rather than later about the direction for what we're going to do with that millage rate. So what you're talking about is a 3 to 4 month process, Elizabeth, and we don't have the time for that.
Right.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Thank you. I think there's been a bunch of excuse me. I think that there have been several good points made. But I think that there's some principles involved too. Obviously, except for the federal government, everybody has to spend less than they make. So we're trapped by that. If we're not bringing in the money and we have to make these expenditures, we got to get more money somehow. But before we even think about raising a tax, we also have to consider, are we cut to the bone? Are we as lean as we can be? Because it's not fair to ask the people out there to come up with more money. And it doesn't sound like much, $35, $55, but if again, it's been brought up in this room by other people, it's been brought up that basically like half or over half of the kids are below the poverty level. That's a significant thing going on. So we got to consider that. Now, as for, okay, I think Elizabeth brought up a good point. Can we change anything at Liberty Curtain? It's going to cost us less. Now, okay, if it's a change order and it generates a little bit of expense to put in the change order, but if it ends up the bottom line being what you've done is less than what you had planned on doing, that could be a good thing. The grunts in the service have an aphorism. They say ounces make pounds and pounds make pain. Little things, yes, your staffing is going to be your biggest expense very often, but we can chip away in other places perhaps. I don't know. I'm a newcomer here and a lot of this stuff is over my head anyway. I'm trying to learn it, but I don't think it should be written off without a good look. And I think, frankly, we're micromanaging here. I think that we should say, all right, Dr. Redmond, this is what we want you to do. We want you to figure out how much you can cut and how much we're going to need. You and Joni sit in a room with a cup of coffee, a pot of coffee and some cigarettes or cigars or whatever, and just figure it out and then come back. We're talking about, oh my God, should we cut classes? Should we put kids together? We don't know anything about that. That's their job. That's all I have to say.
That was the point that I made.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
I know.
we are definitely,
That was the point I made a minute ago whenever I said that we want to have them go back and see what they can do. But they need to know what their goal is. I mean, are they gonna, are we telling them, we don't want any tax increase? You go down, you go back and you find, you get it back to where, so we don't
I
have
think
to
that's
have a
what they
tax
should.
increase.
Our goal is to have no tax increase. If you can't get there, you come back and tell us we can't get there. But I don't think that it should be taken lightly to say, oh, well, we're gonna increase taxes again.
if there's no tax increase, then we will hit the general fund balance. Everyone's comfortable doing that. That's what it would be. You have to understand the impacts of that over the year. And that's not a short-term impact. That is a very long-term impact. Same thing again with increasing taxes. That has very many benefits, not just to next year, but it increases tax base as years go on. And it levels out your tax increases
I
from year to
understand
year.
that. Saying
Right.
we may have to do that.
Well,
What I'm asking is, have we done the other side of the coin?
And we're working,
Are we, you know,
we're working,
and
absolutely.
so-
We are absolutely.
and
working.
again, you're unfortunately in the real hot seat in that you're getting blamed for things that happened before you got here.
Well, I
And
think
this is,
it's
you
also
know-
important to understand that
Me too, by the way.
in the best possible circumstance, the costs for operating a school district increase faster than revenues in every
Yeah,
circumstance.
take out everything else. That's still a factor.
So if the board's consensus is that we write a budget that does not include any tax increase, then we'll do that. But the board also has to recognize we'll be significantly cutting services in order to make that difference up, so that we can maintain the fund balance where we need to maintain it over the long term.
Well, again, I think it comes down in, are the services that are being cut fluff, or are they things that are important?
That's in the eye of the beholder.
I was just gonna say that I think it depends on who's looking at it. If we start reducing, raising class sizes, and if you have a child that's in second grade and it went from 18 kids in the class to 24, then you might be upset. If you don't have a kid in second grade, it doesn't affect you. So I mean, it's on how you do it. But I'm kind of leaning to the zero myself. I think we can look at, re-examine things and see what we can reduce and cut without harming anything with the students. That's the main goal. And if we do, then the people are gonna complain after the fact and let us know what we did wrong, as they always do, and we reevaluate for the following year. I understand the concept of instrumental, and I know you and I've talked about it a lot in the past. I've always agreed to it. I just don't know this is a year with everything going on.
So going back, looking at the numbers on the slide number 3 on your presentation, Joni, is what you're asking us to do is to come up with a 24-25 budget that is so looking at our revenues of $85,409,008 plus our ESSER that we're going to be expending at $1.5 million. And knowing that we have to set aside $2,197,622.
Yes.
Are you saying that we have to come in under that? Oh, $86,509,008.
Yes, you're,
Is that what you're? I mean,
yes. Balance it. Unless you use general fund money, general fund
Right,
balance,
right.
fund balance money.
so I guess I'm looking for some more specific direction here. I mean, we're enough off that we're not going to be able to find it in the easy things.
No, I don't know where we're gonna make up 2.3 million.
I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Bill.
I think I haven't been clear in what I'm saying. I just want to make sure that we're economizing as much as we can, wherever we can.
Yep.
And I understand that it's not a snap your fingers process. But it's something that has to be there all the time. If we're in a corner and we have to do raise taxes, I think that it should never be done cavalierly. I think that
Yeah.
we need to say,
Yeah.
we're inflicting pain. We're doing something bad to the people out there. It might be for a good cause, but there's no question about it. If they, a lot of people are going to be paying marginal, it's not like they have a lot of expendable money. And I think that we need to remember that. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not saying that, okay, absolutely no tax increase. I'm saying make sure that we're cutting as much as we can so we get the best benefit out of a tax increase. So, and
That part has been a commitment that I made to the board when I was hired, that I'm going to be spending, Joan and I are going to spend tons of time looking at this and seeing where there are opportunities for us to reduce our expenditures. And I will continue to do that. Everything from staffing to class sizes to the facilities work that we're doing to how much teachers are purchasing. We're looking closely at all that stuff because I'm with you. We have to be as efficient as possible. And there's a balance point in there somewhere down to that, back to that, what are we providing to our students in our community? And so I want to cut as close to that as possible without compromising the work we do with kids.
I would agree with that.
So for the board presentation, do you want me to present all of these slides? Do you want me to take slides out? What is it that you would like me to present to the board? Right now, I just have this, I have no tax increase, I have a 25 and I have a 50. Is there, do you want me to take them all?
Show them everything.
Yeah.
I think you should leave it all in.
Okay,
And I'm a little worried because when you start to tap into your fund balance, it's like living off your savings account. And a lot of districts fall into that trap. They say, oh, well, we only need 2 million this year. Well, then next year rolls around and you have as much of a deficit or whatever. And we're having the same conversation and everybody's saying, no, I don't want a tax increase. Well, we'll just take it out of fund balance. And pretty soon, after 2 or 3 years of that, then you get it down to the point where you're in the danger zone as far as what you've got there for emergency purposes. And I think that's a real slippery slope that you start on. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to tax increase anybody and anybody else, but I just don't know what the alternatives are going to be.
Something I was told a long time ago. It took me a while to figure out what he was talking about. For every dollar you take out of your reserve, it takes you $2 to put back in. Because you're taking it out this year, and then you're taking it out every year. So you want to put it back in, it's going to cost you double.
That's right.
I don't want to see us taking money out, dwindling our reserve fund, because it's there for a reason. It's there when we need it. But again, I don't know.
Plus the fact that
Is there any way, I don't know what we've cut so far this year or what we're planning on cutting? Can we have a slide or have a presentation saying, showing what we've reduced or what we plan on reducing? Or is it too early for that yet? That's kind of balanced with, doing what we're gonna do for a tax increase, but also show we have done our share of reducing.
Yeah.
I
So,
think that's fair.
by next week, we won't have all of the early retirement numbers in. And because we've committed to looking at staffing reductions through attrition, we won't have those numbers until after April 14th.
And that, so I said, it was
That's the
just,
biggest reduction.
that would be nice to have that data before we decide on any kind of a tax increase.
Well, even if you would recommend something in April, May is really when you vote on it. So May could look different. I'm hoping May looks different than April.
How many projected retirees do we have now for the teaching staff?
That takes that could take the plan.
No, just, do we have any who've already said they're gonna retire?
Oh,
I
yes.
know, I can
Three.
think of one off the top of my head.
Three.
And we're hoping to get 3 to 5 more.
One, and what I'm gonna say, I'm gonna take a page out of Elizabeth's book right now. What I'm gonna say is not gonna be popular and nobody's gonna like it. I'm gonna put that as a disclaimer right up front. But what, and I'm not blaming anybody. So what I'm saying is, and it will not be popular and you guys will probably shoot me down, but what I would say would maybe be a safe, maybe not safe, maybe that's not the right word, but a smart thing to do at this point. And it won't be popular with anybody. But what I'm saying is to take, since we don't know what these parameters are going to be, because we don't have the data. We don't know what we're going to save in healthcare. We don't know what we're going to save in early retirement. We don't know what to save. We're going to, in a lot of these things, start out, pick one of these tax increase numbers, whether it's 25 or 50. And then once you get your data, calculate in there. And once you get that data, then by the time May rolls around, then you could say, oh, we don't need to increase tax to that point. Maybe we can go to a zero tax at that point. But to have that in there, and I'm not, and I know you're going to say, well, they're not going to, they'll work to that number. No, with the understanding that their goal is going to be getting it so we can get using all of these reductions in costs, get it down to the point where we don't have to have a tax increase or a minimal one. That way, you're looking at worst case scenario and you present it that way to the public. This is a preliminary budget with the operative word being preliminary. It is not the final budget. We are still working on it, and we've done this in the past. And I think Butch can say that that's true. If we did that, we say this is a starting point, not the final. And then as we get some of these costs more to come into focus, then we'll have a better idea. And if you still want to go for a zero tax increase, then hit the fund balance in May. Well, that's another conversation. But that would be what my recommendation would be at this point. And I know, like I said, none of you are going to agree with that, but I think that's the most prudent course of action at this moment.
I think that's a good point, Jeff. I still would like to see options for Liberty Curtain costs to come down. Whether it's new furniture, special lighting. I still want to see those numbers. Me personally, I'm only one board member. I get that. I'm only one board member, so I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm just saying it's a K-4 school. I think we can cut the costs here, and if we need a change order to do it sooner than later, I'm really hopeful that Joni's going to come in with those numbers. And I'm going to throw out an example, an operations example. And this is probably going to say, well, it's only a couple $1,000s. All right, it's only a couple $1,000s, but here's one. And I'm not pointing any fingers. This is just my own observation. Everyone has their own observations. And this is not to make any staff member look bad. This is an actual observation. I see people mowing grass out here at the school district when we're in drought. Topsoil is flying everywhere. And Jeff, you remember I called you a couple years ago and let you know, I said, hey man, cutting the grass, there's no grass to cut, we're in a drought. So, and I'm not, maybe things have changed, but years before that in the summertime, they let the grass grow 5-6 inches and leave it alone. And now we're like spraying and we're cutting the grass when it doesn't need to be cut. And again, a couple $1,000s, but maybe a relook-see, and this isn't micromanaging, this is like operational, maybe during the summertime, we don't need to do those things. And that would save some money, especially with diesel costs. We have a diesel tank. We keep buying diesel equipment. You know, that's a long-term problem. But again, might be a couple $1,000s. I'm just saying, Dr. Redmond, I'm sure, and you and the team will find little things like that. You know, so anyways, there you go, have it.
Johnny, I have a question for you. If we reduce the cost of the Liberty Curtain project, that's not a return to general fund. That's just, we have to take out less bond, right?
The next bond, yes.
Yeah, right. So my point with that, Elizabeth, is I don't think a change in Liberty Curtain is going to affect our overall budget picture, because it means that we have to take out less bond. It's not going to affect our bottom line there,
Not, yeah, no.
not in any substantial way.
Well, no, that's a good way to put it, but we have those soft costs that we have that 1.2 million or what is it called? The soft cost fund for Liberty Curtain.
If we're saving money, we're saving money. I mean, it may not.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not having to
What
pay
we
something
have to
back,
do
we don't
with
have to pay
budget,
something
it's
back.
still-
Right. it
It's
would
still
be
better
less-
to spend
it would be
less
Debt.
than more, so.
Yeah, in the
And
future.
But that's
Mr.
not
Johnston, I'm not gonna fight you. I agree with you.
really, I'm good. I appreciate it. Sure.
I think that on the Liberty Curtain project, as far as at this point, I don't think there's a lot of huge savings. We've been looking at some of that stuff to see if there's anything we can glean, but contracts are out, materials ordered, most of the stuff is in place. I don't know that we're going to grab up just there's not a big dollar amount there to do. They're getting ready to, pour concrete for the floors next week. Steel will be going up in May. Most, as soon as the steel's up in some of those sections, they're putting flooring down. Some of that stuff it's that contract signed and done. I'm not sure, we look at everything that comes through as far as through submittal exchange and all that, but I don't think we're going to glean a bunch of savings there. What I'm trying to do on that project is not allow change orders that are unnecessary, any of that stuff. But there's not huge stuff there. I don't know if that helps you at all, Elizabeth, or whatever. But
I understand.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
The
see
ship
it
is, ship has left the dock.
on that particular thing. I mean, I've asked about a couple of different things, and it's ordered, it's already in place. It can't be changed. It's pretty hard to stop the ship now. It's sailing, and everybody has their contracts. I will say that I worry when you talk about taking money from the fund balance, because that's always like plan B for when we have a catastrophic loss in one of these buildings, and we're relying on grants to fix the high school's HVAC, some of those things. Fund balance was always what I was told. If we have a major breakdown, we're going to dip into fund balance. But if that's not there, you're taking away some of your alternative plan if we don't get those grants. So I think that's another thing we have to kind of keep in mind when we're looking at the tax increase stuff. I don't want to see a tax increase either. I hate paying taxes. Everybody does, but I think that taken away from fund balance, when that's been kind of the place you're going to have to go. We know that the systems at this high school are only going to last a short time. 5 years ago when I came, we spent $500,000 and said, this is a 3 or 4 year fix for these units. We need to have a plan. and the plan being grants, we're getting to the end on that. We're at 23, 24 years on some of these pieces of equipment that have a 15-year life. We've patched them along. So, I think you have to also think of some of those things when we're looking at the tax increase piece. We just talked in there that we cut any money going into capital reserve in next year's budget. I thought I saw in one of those slide presentations. So, if we don't get the grants, we may be looking at fund balance to take care of some of the problems that we have at the high school. So, I don't know. Just kind of an observation sitting in the back of the room trying to listen to that. But, I lose sleep over this high school worrying about how we're going to keep it and maintain it, keep it warm. If that chiller down there fails, what we're going to do, some of those things. So, we have a lot of major things. And even if we reduce class sizes, reduce teachers and all that, we still have the same amount of square foot in the buildings that we have to heat and cool and maintain, with some exceptions. I mean, we may have a classroom we can shut off or whatever, but we're not getting rid of buildings. We're not at a point where we can downsize to that extreme. We still have to maintain these buildings and fund that. So when we look at these tax increases, some of it's going to go to maintaining the current buildings we have and on a long-term type thing.
No, very good. Thank you so much, Rob. That was really well put. And I'll be honest with you, I'll just tell you right now, I am not for cutting infrastructure. Absolutely not. Those are parts. It's like, oh, I'm going to drive my car without an engine today. It's just that those aren't negotiable for me. So it was well put. No, Rob, that's, I totally, heating, cooling, water, sewer, electricity.
Well, I just, like I said, I think when we start hitting into that fund balance, that really worries me, because we have $63 million of deficiencies listed under the capital of the 10-year plan. Now, that number is going to change because Liberty Curtain's in there, but even if you still look at it, there's $40 million in deficiencies. We're working towards upgrading that number. We know inflation's hit that by probably 30%. Our buildings and those expenditures for facilities alone they're not changing. We can look at, we are looking at basically what are nice to have and what we have to have. And most of the stuff that's in the 10-year plan is have to have stuff. It's not nice to have, it's just have to have. And we can make that list a lot longer with all the nice to have stuff and stuff that we need, but at some point we have to chip away at that. And if we continually don't raise the taxes to take care of that, I don't know where you'll end up within 5-8 years out, because if we don't maintain systems, you take a boiler you put in, it's a 97% efficient boiler. They say if you don't maintain that boiler, it drops to 50% efficiencies within a year. So you start to look at some of that stuff, and I don't know what the exact gas bill is, but we'll use round numbers. It's $500,000 a year, and you're dropping 50% efficiencies. You can start to do some of the math, that those numbers go up pretty quickly. So I think we have to look at some of that for just facilities wise when we're looking at your tax stuff. But I'll stop at that.
No, Rob, if I may, please, Chair Jeff.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Rob, you just gave me a really interesting perspective. Thank you. What about this idea? When you show the lowest tax increase, we do everyone loves the pie chart. This percentage of that tax increase is going to grant match. This percentage is going to infrastructure, building infrastructure. This part of the pie is going to whatever administration, however you see these pieces of pie. And then the second part is for the grants, the matching grants, maybe this would be helpful for all of us. I mean, all of us. For every dollar we match in tax money, $1 of tax money equals $4 in grants. Or is it 25% match, $3 in, whatever the match is. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the match is, 25%. Do you see what I'm saying though? So it's not just like, it's subdivided that way into a pie. And I know that sounds like micromanaging, but I think that might be helpful to consider. That's all, but thank you, Rob, you gave me that idea.
All right, well, I think we've
Beat that one.
beat this horse pretty good. So I think the superintendent and business manager need some direction here for their team as to where we would like them to go in terms of how they're going to move forward with this. In terms of, are they looking at, are we saying, go back, we don't want you to have any kind of tax increase. We want to start with a
Like you said,
25%
I'll
and
present
have
it all
them,
to the board. That whole package to the board, if that's what you prefer.
okay, all right. And then, but I'm saying that if that's the route we're going to go, then there's not going to be any specific recommendation from this group.
I still think the idea of however the administration showing what that tax increase exactly goes towards, I mean, like in a graphic of some sort, however that is, so people,
I don't know how they can do that.
It's gonna go to paying the bills, the electric bill,
Yeah,
the health insurance bill.
okay, all right.
salaries. So are we just going to leave this up to the entire board then to,
Oh, okay, you're
To-
gonna
to
maybe
drive
make some
that.
kind of recommendation.
but, or does this group want to make a recommendation?
Hmm.
From the finance committee?
So for I recommend let the whole board here.
I mean, they need some direction, that's all.
We will in April. Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I could offer something. I really can't, simply because this is such tragic news. And I think this is one time when the whole board, I mean, I feel confident that normally a committee can offer some sort of recommendation or guidance, but this is to me, it's a different animal. Just like last year, and this is at least now we all have a base of information, and they need to know where that money needs to go, where you need the money and where you're cutting. They need to know that. That's my only recommendation. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's the way we'll proceed then with that. I think we only have a couple other quick things on the
Yes,
agenda.
and
that
they're
Jenny
actually
can probably hit pretty quickly.
nice, fun, happy things. CD and money market rates. So like I had mentioned before, we do not have any money going into capital reserve, budgeted next year going into capital reserve for 24-25. So I would, looking at the money in that we have accumulated for the interest in the CD. And again, we renewed that till June 1st. And at the end of that 3 months from last year and all of this year, we will have interest of about $360,000. I guess what I would recommend is that we would roll that over and transfer that over to the capital project fund in Fund 32 for 24-25. So at least give them a start of some additional money for next year. Since again, that's not an expense, that's money that we've earned in the CD. Just kind of give you an idea, our current money market interest rate is 4%. The total earned since July is about 377,000. Again, the 360 was what will be rolled over just from this fiscal year. The CD rate is 5.25%. The interest earned in that for just this fiscal year is 272,000. And the food service CD rate, the total earned for this fiscal year will be $7,826. So that's good stuff. And then the next one is new software search. Again, we are looking at all kinds of options, and this is one that will save us money. We are looking at 2 new software. One is the IU software. There's 300 school districts in just Pennsylvania alone that use the software. So lots of peer support So, we were looking at that option. They came in and did a presentation to the business office. And, something they were very, very interested in. We received a demo today, so they can go in and just play around with it today. Williamsport uses it. Many school districts in our area and across the state use the software. They have a great technical support staff, and just the numbers that came in. The first year, of course, there'll be conversion costs, but years after that, we would probably save $40,000 just in the maintenance and the tech support versus
Which
what we
one is that?
currently have. That's the IU software.
CSIU.
Yeah, CSIU software. Accounting. It's our whole accounting software. What's that? CSIU, that's what they call it. We're also looking at Skyward. When we were at Pasco, Randy and I, they had a stand, their exhibitor stand, and many school districts also use Skyward. And so we also will get them in. Chrissy and I talked to them yesterday and giving them, what exactly we need. They're going to come in again, do a presentation. We'll get their demo. Our plan is, and there we could easily say is $50,000. But again, I don't know. I want to make sure it's everything we need, everything we love, everything we have. So the business office is tasked. They're the ones who are in the weeds using it. So I would like to make a decision by August of this year to start the conversion and the implementation by December, and by July 1, 2025, use the new software. So there is absolutely potential savings between, I'm going to say $30,000 and $50,000.
So when we have the recommendation.
What's that?
You're gonna get a new system and it's gonna be save us.
Yes.
That's a good
How
thing.
about, it's gonna be easier to
Okay.
use, not as complicated, less learning
Yeah.
curve, just in general. Even more than that, which weighs really super heavily on it, is they have a tech support system that will answer your phone calls. We don't
In
have that.
English?
In English, yes.
That's
And they'll
beautiful.
come and they'll do training. They don't nickel and dime you. Our current system, every time we change a signature for board president that goes on the checks, they charge us $500.
You got it.
And they have to do it. All these new systems, you just go in and do it yourself. So there's lots of
Is
those types of, it's a win.
How
That's a good
compatible is it
thing.
with the auditors? They're happy with it?
Why
They
we
don't-
ask them, they have many school districts that use the IU software, and Skyward as well. So they are familiar with the system. It-
CSIU, that software's been around a long
For,
time.
yes,
It's-
I know.
we
There are
use
people
that.
though, there are users who hate it. There's a payroll girl who does not like it at all, but so go talk to her. Why doesn't she like it? And, I think it's a win-win. It will be very painful conversion.
Mm. Always
I
is.
told them I will end up baking them cookies or whatever they need. It's gonna be horrible, but we started so early that we're gonna do our due diligence, get our software cleaned up, our current software cleaned up, and do lots of prep work. When we eventually decide, we'll pull in other people, building secretaries and some of the teachers, because they also touch the system, not at the length that the business office does, but we also want them to be comfortable with the change. So that's good news. Again, that's us doing out there searching new ways to cut money, new ways to be more efficient. So we really are, on top of that.
Good.
That's all I have.
Example of us
That's the
turning over every
principle
stone.
that I was talking
Right,
about.
and that's the kind of thing we're
Yeah.
going through, and,
And that's.
yeah, we're trying to turn over every stone.
I will.
This
I'll
is
bake
so-
cookies.
All right. I think we've hit everything now.
Oh, so new
Did you
grants applications, it was on here, but I don't see anybody on that was not on the facilities. So it's the same exact information that was on facilities.
All right. Yes, we've hit everything on there. Is there anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn?
We're good till what, April 23rd?
Last Tuesday.
Chair,
is-
Chair Jeff,
Yes.
this is for Joni. Joni, please take this under consideration before you decide on whatever software package you want.
Mhm.
Give it to a first grader, get their opinion and go with it.
I like that.
I think you have some merit there.
I
They-
like-
They'll be like, oh, this one's the best.
They would probably use it better than we would. Probably true.
And that's not that's not an insult. It's just.
No, we don't take it as that.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for sitting with us all afternoon here through 2 meetings. Unless anybody has anything else for the Finance Committee, I will call the meeting adjourned. And next meeting's April 23rd, I believe, for both committees. Thank you.